IntellectualRadio.com. Feed your brain!
Good evening and welcome to the Drive at 5 on IntellectualRadio.com/iHeart radio station. I'm your host, Roman, and we have a good show planned for you today. Right now, we're okay. Hold on just one second. Don't forget to stay tuned to IntellectualRadio.com/iHeart radio station for Warriors Talk with Rochelle at 6 p.m. Tonight, my guests via Zoom are advocates for refugee and immigration rights, advocates and organizers who cross the border in order to make a better life for themselves and family. Please give a Drive at 5 welcome to Rebecca Zalilo and Dr. Fasika Alim. Eileen. Did I say it correctly? Okay, welcome to the Drive, ladies.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hello.
All right. So very quickly, please give IntellectualRadio.com/iHeart radio station your background. I'm going to start with Fasika.
Thank you, Roman. Thank you for having us on this show. So my name is Fasika Alam. I am Programs Director with the United African Organization, which is a Chicago-based coalition of African community-based organizations that promotes social and economic justice and civic participation and empowerment among African immigrants in the state of Illinois. Thank you for having us.
No problem. Rebecca, please give IntellectualRadio.com/iHeart radio station your background.
Hello, everybody. My background is really coming from an organizer's perspective throughout college and high school. My parents are refugees from Ethiopia, and so after having experience interning at refugee resettlements, predominantly Black refugee resettlement agencies, I became a refugee and immigration rights advocate. I also work with the City Bureau as well. So thank you.
No problem. There's a lot of questions to get to where we are today. But first, I want to start with the basics here. What is the proper terminology for describing Blacks who is crossing the border? Is it migrants? Is it immigrants or refugees? What is the proper term? I will start with Fasika.
I think Black immigrants that come into the United States come in a variety of statuses, right? So those terminologies oftentimes refer to different immigration statuses within the United States. And I think definitely Rebecca can give better descriptions, but so most African immigrants Black immigrants that come to the United States about 60% of Black immigrants that come to the United States come through what we call family-based immigration. That is, my apologies. We have so many things happening this week. My phone is
No problem. I understand.
So 60% of Black immigrants come through what we call family-based immigrations. That is, somebody immigrates first and then petitions to bring over their wife, their children, their parents to the United States. So that's the predominant form of immigration for Black immigrants. But about a third of immigration for Black immigrants is through the asylum process. That means you, at the port of entry in the United States, you ask for asylum. That means that you are fearing persecution in your country of origin, and therefore you're seeking refuge here. And then another, about a third, come as refugees. That means they have requested refugee status to the United Nations Higher Commission for Refugees, which is an external, it's a United Nations organizations that designates folks as refugees before they enter to the United States. So when they come, they're already coming with a status. And then, for Black immigrants, there are things like also diversity visa that account for about 10% of Black immigrants. So the diversity visa is a visa process where you apply on a yearly basis. Is a quota-based immigration program that provides visas for people from certain countries to emigrate, but obviously they have to have certain requirements, right? There is an education requirement, and recently they instituted a passport requirement that to apply for the program itself, that you have to have a visa. So there are a variety of processes and statuses that people can apply through to immigrate to the United States. So although sometimes we use these interchangeably, they all signify different statuses.
All right, thank you for that, because a lot of people don't know the difference between migrants, immigrants, and refugees. So I really appreciate that. So Rebecca, can you explain to us the latest information of what's going on at the border regarding Haitian immigrants?
I would love to, just really quickly. Sorry, my screen, kind of went out for some reason. So I'm glad I'm back. I actually would like to defer this to Fasika, just because her organization, United African Organization, is having like a lot of conversation with those who are directly on the ground. And so I think she'd have really good updates. The quick ones that I can share are more so news related updates. Washington Post shared that, yesterday, I believe, Guatemalan police rescued like 126 migrants, mainly Haitian migrants, from an abandoned shipping container on the side of a road. And that's just one example of many that is highlighting the desperate flow of people from Haiti across South America. If you wanted specifics, 106 of those 126 are Haitian or were Haitian, 100 from Nepal and 9 from Ghana. So overwhelming majority, like Black diaspora, African descendants. And BBC was also reporting that. Also, I think on Thursday, police in Mexico found about like 652 migrants crammed into 6 trailers near the U.S. border. Half of them were nearly children. And a lot of refugee advocates or immigration advocates have been particularly concerned with the recent surge of migrants from Haiti, especially as that particular country is facing like very high per capita kidnapping rate. So right now they're saying that it's one of the world's highest per capita kidnapping rates. But I will defer back to Fasika for more information.
Okay, Fasika.
Thank you, Rebecca. I think when we talk about the situation of Black migrants at the border, we all heard, a month ago that there were tens of thousands of migrants at the border that had migrated up, from Latin America to the Mexico border. I think so. It's important to understand how that is happening, right? So it's important to understand that people are not coming straight from Haiti to the Mexican border. But what happened was in 2010, with the last earthquake that happened in Haiti, that there was an exodus of people seeking employment because Haiti was so unstable, not only as a result of natural disasters, but because of political unrest. There was an exodus of people out of Haiti into Latin America because there was the potential of employment. There was the Olympics in Brazil, and there was a thriving economy in Chile that was attractive to people to be able to support their families. So people migrated to those areas because of those opportunities. However, shortly after, those opportunities dried up, and those people that migrated there were forced to move out, right? And let's not discount the anti-Blackness of Latin America. We know particularly countries like Argentina and Chile, who have historically whitened their society, and therefore have, historically anti-white societies. It would be easy to drive out Black migrants. So they were driven out of Latin America. And so they saw as their next destination, and the destination of hope, as the United States, as many of us do, right? So they made their way to north, many of them traveling through 11 countries, right? Talking about Chile, Brazil, Colombia, and then Panama and Honduras and Guatemala, and all the countries that are missing in between, through treacherous jungles to get to the border of the United States and Mexico. And so at that point, we saw a large gathering of Black migrants at the border. And let's not discount, most of these people were Haitian, but among them were also Cubans, were also other African migrants, right, from countries such as Cameroon, Angola, and name it. They were a combination of Black migrants. So what we saw happening at the border is when these people got to the border, there was obviously a panic at the US-Mexico border, and the use of the US instituting what they have been using since the beginning of the pandemic, which is Title 42, which is a public health measure to inhibit people from coming to the country using the excuse of public health. Obviously the pandemic was happening at the time. And so a lot of these families, and these are families, let's be honest, these are families with children, a lot of these children that have been born in Latin America. And what they ended up doing is, one, despite the fact that these folks had a legitimate fear, a legitimate reluctance to return to the countries because of the reason that they left them to begin with. And before this even happened, just this year, Haiti experienced another earthquake. And then following that was the political turmoil that ended in the assassination of their president, right? And so fearing returning to their country, they made the decision to head to the US. And what we saw was that instead of these people being treated with dignity, they were mistreated. We saw them being what looked like whips, right? Men on horseback using the reins of horses to gesture this, what they say, despite what they say, the gesturing itself was really...
I mean, there was, and I'm sorry to interrupt, and I want to set the record straight. You're referring to one of the most disturbing images, seeing a white border patrolman on horseback whipping, and they're saying allegedly, which if you talk to some people who was there, it was not alleged. It actually happened.
It happened. Yeah.
To prevent them from crossing the border.
Yeah.
And we had a conversation, Fasika and Rebecca. You say this is not new. The only problem is it was caught on camera this time, because they did this before. Your thoughts on that patrolman on horseback whipping Black migrants trying to enter U.S.? I'll start with you, Rebecca.
As we all feel, like those images are, signify some sort of like blast from the past of of like racial, slavery. And it was very disgusting. But those of us who work in immigration or, resettlement work know that there's all sorts of abuses, all sorts of harms, all sorts of violence that are happening to immigrants in general, right? Or refugees, or those who are fleeing from their homeland. And, anti-Blackness is additional component on top of that. So we may not have seen other immigrant groups being, apprehended like that, right? We may not have seen them on horses and whipped, but it's equally as damaging, equally as violent. There are people out there that BBC News and other journalists have captured, where there are either Border Patrol or ICE members who have like machetes or knives or like batons or all of these things, literally hitting people from getting to a river that they're like 4 or 5 steps away from. And so all this kind of violence is not new, but this particular image towards Haitian immigrants, right? Black migrants is even more uncomfortable.
Some report says, Fashika, and you can answer to that as well, that they intentionally have risen the river to prevent them from crossing the border. Is that correct or incorrect? Fasika?
Sorry, my printer is running, but I haven't heard that particularly, but I will say, like, what some of the egregious stories that we have heard about even migrants at the border, right? So when we first heard about the separation of families, the separation of children from their mothers, right, at the border during Trump's administration, the first legal case in that issue was of a Black mother and child. When we hear about the mistreatment of Black migrants in detention centers, we've all heard the stories about the unauthorized hysterectomies of women in detention facilities. Those were Black migrants. So, I mean, despite the fact that the issue of Black migrants is really absent from the public consciousness of the public's consciousness as we discuss about immigration, some of these most egregious cases that start these huge issues in the immigration fight have really historically started with Black migrants. So if that is in fact correct, and I don't know, it wouldn't be surprising to me.
Is there any updates regarding what happened to the white border patrolman on horseback? The last that we know, he was on desk duty. Any updates regarding that? Because the media have shifted to other news. No.
I haven't heard anything. And oftentimes the public is not going to hear of border patrols or ICE workers, employees, whatever you want to call them, who are also sometimes people of color. We're not going to hear if they get, suspended or reprimanded or any of those things, because they're working for a system in which they're supposed to be doing that work, right? Like this is what they're supposed to be doing. And so we're not going to hear about those things. I mean, personally, Fasika and I have worked on a few cases, a lot of cases actually, and we had one rather recently, of a pregnant African Muslim woman who, ICE and Border Patrol and medical doctors were trying to deny that she was pregnant, was trying to deny her medical care. She was put in detention at O'Hare. She was deported. And there was some sort of internal investigation going on that I can't speak on too much. But there's some information that there were a lot of inappropriate mishandlings that happened. And these are things that immigrants and advocates and organizers have been saying forever. But now we have one particular case in which there's actually some sort of investigation going on. And so when we get more details and when I'm able to share that at another time, I would love to go into that some more.
Well, let's start with the Biden administration, which Fasika have mentioned. One of the reasons they said they were sending them back was because of the health concerns and COVID-19, which the Biden administration could have easily changed by a stroke of a pen. What are your thoughts on how the Biden administration handled the policy and Haitians crossing the border? I'll start with you, Fasika.
I think, first of all, we have to look back at why this policy was instituted, right? This Title 42 policy. Title 42 has been part of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention policy. It's been in U.S. policy since in the 1940s. So this is not a new policy, but it has not been enacted before, right? And so when you look at the Trump administration and look at the folks that were in charge at the time, their goal, they were so anti-immigrant that they pushed the CDC into enacting this policy, this public health policy, using COVID-19 as an excuse to prevent immigrants from coming in. I mean, we can argue about the policy in itself, but so many health practitioners, policy folks have really written against this policy, that the use of Title 42 is not necessary, that it really negates the public health excuse for it. But we know that the Trump administration, and particularly Stephen Miller, that was the guy that was in charge of the Department of Homeland Security at the time, was so anti-immigrant that this was his policy. He was adamant about this, instituting this policy to prevent border crossings, right? And what we find now is that this is, when you look at COVID rates among Haitians, even in Haiti, it is so low that it doesn't even make sense that this is an excuse to prevent people from migrating. But I personally believe that this was a racist policy to prevent the migration of non-white folks into the United States. And what we see today is that it is disproportionately impacting Black immigrants, particularly Haitians.
Why the Biden administration did not address those concerns when Hispanics were crossing the border at an alarming rate, just like the Haitians and Black migrants at the time?
Go ahead, Ruka.
I just wanted a little bit of clarity on your question again, or maybe I misheard. Can you please repeat?
I was saying why the Biden administration did not address those concerns, those same concerns of Title 42, when Hispanics were crossing the border during the pandemic?
Well, I'll be rather brief. Title 42 is a concern for any immigrant or any person that's migrating, whichever status they have. And so, like Fasika and I can tell you, in all of the work that we do, Title 42 is the issue. It's going to affect everybody regardless. Maybe folks who aren't involved within immigration work may not have heard of Title 42 as it has afflicted, Hispanic and Latin American migrants or immigrants, but it's been in that conversation. Maybe it just hasn't been in the news so much. In regards to Haiti and Black people in general, you're not going to hear so much about it in the news because immigration is anti-Black and basically everybody else is as well. So the media is not going to cover this specific type of immigration issue in depth. That's why there's a lot of information that people are asking for that we don't even know about. And that's why a lot of numbers aren't adding up.
Africans and Haitians are crossing the border at an alarming rate, however, sent back more than other ethnicities. Why they are sent back at an alarming rate more than other ethnicities who is crossing the border, Rebecca?
Anti-Black policy, anti-Black rhetoric, anti-Black feelings. It's, that's really the basis of why we're seeing things happening at this type of rate. Fasika can go into it more, but at the whole and at the center of this conversation today, and whenever we talk about Black immigrants or Black migrants within the immigration system, it's really because of the dislike of Black people emigrating here or migrating here or coming here, right? It's to prevent the flow, as Fasika mentioned in a previous question. So it really comes down to that.
Fasika, you want to add to that?
Yeah, sure. And, speaking honestly, a lot of these, particularly these border restrictions, affect both Black immigrants and non-Black immigrants equivalently, right? We look at the Remain in Mexico policy that prevents people who are legally allowed to seek asylum, right? The U.S., those that talk about illegal immigration in the United States always talk about illegal immigrants, right? But seeking refuge and seeking asylum at a port of entry is legal. It is not illegal for somebody to come to a border entry point and seek asylum. That's not illegal, right? It is not only a US law that allows people to do that, it is international law that allows people to seek refuge. So we hear a lot about the fact that is illegal, and for those of us that work in this field, it's a little, for lack of a better term, annoying, because it is not illegal. That is the legal way to do it, is to come to a port of entry and say, I am seeking refuge because I fear persecution, or there are humanitarian issues that prevent me from going back to the country that I am from. That is not illegal. And therefore, the fact that the United States is using this unfounded mechanism in Title 42 to deny people the right to seek asylum is what we have a problem with. What we have a problem with is these are people that are and obviously there are others that come from Latin American nations that are validly seeking refuge as well. But I think we're here to focus on the plight of Black immigrants. And so speaking about those that come to Latin America that are of African descent, and we're talking about predominantly of Haitians, but we're also talking about Cubans, we're talking about Africans, right? There are plenty of people that come from Cameroon, that come from Ethiopia, that come from Eritrea, that come from Nigeria, that you will, and other countries that you will find at the border of the United States and Mexico, because they are seeking refuge. And as you can imagine, these are people that are taking, I mean, you can imagine the journey, right? People are putting everything they have in stake to fly to a Latin American country and go through the jungles of Latin America. I mean, you know, a couple of years ago, we received a family from the DRC, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, DRC in Central Africa, that is experiencing extreme civil conflict, where a family who had experienced extreme trauma, wife experienced sexual trauma, husband had a broken leg, they had 3 children, they managed to get themselves out of DRC and make it to the Congo, and then managed to afford a flight to Brazil, and then trekked through the jungles of Brazil and the rest of Latin America and Central America with their 3 children under 10 years old to make it to the border of the United States. I mean, it makes me emotional to think about their story, but this is the reality. This is people's stories. It is a story of trauma. And therefore, when people come to our borders to say, we don't give a rat's ass. I'm sorry, can I curse on your show?
Yeah, you can.
That we don't care what you've been through, and we will not even give you the opportunity to make your case for an asylum is injustice. This is not what America stands for. And so this is what we're fighting for. And what we're finding is oftentimes Black immigrants get denied that opportunity to even make the claim. We have heard stories of Black migrants at the border that don't get the same opportunity as Latin American migrants to make the case for asylum. That is where we see the injustice. We're not saying that Latin American migrants don't have a case or that they don't deserve the same, I don't know, I'm at a loss for words right now, but that due process, but they all deserve a due process. And the fact that Black migrants get less due process is where we see the injustice. And therefore, that's why we're here trying to, raise our voices and make the case that this is not fair. This is not justice. America stands for due process. And the international laws, American laws for asylum seekers ensures that people get due process. But across the country, both those coming externally, but also Black immigrants that are on the internal do not get due process. And that's where our concern lies.
I want to ask this question because something doesn't add up that we mentioned earlier. According to various media outlets, the number of Haitians that crossed the border was 15,000. The Biden administration, they said they sent back 1,300 and the rest were being processed. However, I know I receive a C in math and this information does not add up to me. No more information where they're being processed, and nobody knows the actual accurate number. And Rebecca or Fasika, can you speak on where are those people are, and is the Biden administration lying to us in the media? Anyone?
I wasn't good at math either, but I agree with you. It doesn't add up. And so some of the numbers that we're seeing are numbers from earlier in the year, right? So there's a conflict in the totality of numbers that different news outlets present to you, like the recent migration versus those that started coming, because Cubans have been coming, for some time. And so from our understanding, right, the latest news that we have received, and I will even go into my email because we get numbers quite frequently, is that even the International Organization of Migration, correct me, Ribka, if I'm wrong, but even their estimates are saying that there have been 71 deportation flights to Haiti, right? So 71 flights that have expelled people, and the numbers of expelled Haitians is more than 7,600, right? So yes, we know that a proportion of people have been released internally, and those are the most vulnerable. So that includes children, women and children, families, elderly. So those folks that have family internally have been released to their families, but obviously with the condition they're given court dates to appear in court.
But can I jump in for 1 second?
Yeah.
They have said in various news outlets that some of the immigrants that are being processed are wearing home electronic monitoring devices. Is that true?
Yes, I mean, that's the most recent practice from Immigration and Custom Enforcement, is that they put ankle bracelets on people to ensure that they come to court. So yes, I mean, that is expected that they would put these ankle monitors on folks to make sure it is part of their assurance that they will come to court. So the proportion of people that have been given that opportunity is rather small. So even though they say that most people are being processed, what is happening is they're putting them in these temporary detention centers, and they're using Title 42 to deport them. So we are seeing a number of flights go out of the United States on a daily basis, deporting Haitians. And so, that's most of the people that they're saying, when they say, yes, some of them have been expelled from Del Rio, they're talking about people that have been pushed back into Mexico, right? But most of those people are being detained in preparation for their deportation because they're using Title 42. And it's important that we stop the use of Title 42 as an excuse to deport these people without the opportunity for people to make the case for humanitarian parole or asylum or refugee status.
Very quickly, Rebecca, the Biden administration made a promise to the Haitian Americans that they will be, very, I would say, open and concerned. And the treatment that you're seeing the Trump administration, they will not do. That's totally opposite. Am I correct on that? Because they said they were pandering to get Haitian American votes.
I mean, that part may very well be true, but the part that is in fact true is Biden kind of going back on his promise to really supporting the Haitian people, right? And through their migration journey and not being deported and etc. So
Is yeah, it went directly out. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. And we're having a technical difficulty on Facebook right now. We're going to take a short break and we'll be right back. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Oh, okay, my bad. Can you guys hear me? Okay.
You are still muted.
Lisa, can't hear you. Yes.
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 And we're back, and I do apologize for that technical issue. I apologize to Francisca and Rebecca. What? Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
It's like 3 syllables. Fa-si-ka.
Fasika. I had it right all the time. I'm going too fast.
Yes.
So please apologize to me. So we only have 15 minutes left. So I want to try and get to as much of this issue as possible. One of the issues that surprised me, that Africans and Haitians are currently working in Mexico at lower wages than Mexicans. And the terminology Hispanics use is we do the work that Blacks don't want to do. However, it is reverse in Mexico as Black and Africans are working for Hispanics. Your thoughts on that, and whoever want to take it.
I can go very quickly. So I just want to clear up this phrase. When you said that it's reversed in Latin American countries. So in the U.S., right, being a first world country, any immigrant, any migrant says and does, work the jobs that other Americans do not want to work. That also includes Black Americans, right? So it's quote unquote called the most menial, low wage jobs, which is what essentially people who are undocumented, it's one of the only ways that they can actually have some sort of living and make some sort of money. So when you say that it's in the reverse and now Blacks are working for Latin American people, I just want us to be careful of context. Like it's not because they're choosing to work for them. It just happens to be one of the countries that they have, on their journey, on their route to get to the U.S., right, to leave Haiti. So,
but a lot
it
of
happens
people
to be that they're Hispanic, or Latin American, but it's not by choice.
I understand, but a lot of people are unaware that Africans and Haitians are working in Mexico, and we need to have that understanding that the wages are low in Mexico, and they're sending some type of money to their families in Haiti and in Africa. So what I'm saying is they use that terminology in America, but the reason that I say that's in reverse is because they're saying that because Africans and Haitians are working for people in Mexico. Correct?
I mean, yeah, that's the reality. But I think, honestly, my personal opinion of that whole rhetoric of immigrants take the jobs that others don't want is not, I don't believe in it, honestly. First of all, I don't think it is the reality in the United States. But when we look at the realities in Mexico, perhaps, a lot of factors come into play, right? Oftentimes, even in the United States, right? If you have immigrants that don't have the right documentation to work, then they're going to take work at the lowest wages. They are the most exploitable. They work below minimum wage without any benefits, and they're easy to exploit in this capitalist system. We already know the system is a very exploitative system in itself. And so it makes those groups most vulnerable. And then obviously when people are migrating, and you see this across the world, it doesn't only happen in Latin America as it relates to Black immigrants, but you can go in Africa and talk about migrants and refugees in different countries. They have to take what they feel is available in order to make ends meet. So I don't think it's a new phenomenon in Latin America or the United States. I think it's something that occurs across the world. And so when you have people that have no other choices, they will take what is available in order to make ends meet. And then the added piece with Black people in Latin America is anti-Blackness. We know all over Latin America, there are Black people everywhere, across Ecuador, across Colombia, across Nicaragua, across Colombia. There are Black people across all of those countries that have had to subsist on the least because of their Blackness. And then you add Black people that don't speak the language and don't have the connections to be able to make ends meet. They are more exploitable. And so it is all a matter of, people exploiting people. And we've heard situations in Mexico right now where there are a lot of Black migrants in areas like Tapachula or Tijuana who have had to make a living there and earn wages in order to sustain their families, that are being forced to pay rent that is 5 times what locals would rent usually. So again, this is the whole American ideal of capitalism at play.
Yep.
Exploit who you can exploit.
So that brings me to the question of, and very quickly, because we're running out of time, do you think the reason why Black migrants are being treated the way they are being treated is because of labor issues and trying not to increase the Black population in the United States? I'm going to start with Rebecca. And very brief, please.
Yeah, I think that, can very well be part of the answer, right? It definitely can be part of the answer, but that's not where my mind goes to first. Essentially, it's just dislike or hatred for Black people. So whatever way that manifests, that manifests in saying, we don't want y'all here, so you can't populate over here, sure, that's one route. If that means we're gonna watch you suffer and make you pay 5 times the rate, as Fasika mentioned, that's another way that it can manifest. Hatred or dislike or anti-Blackness for Black people can manifest in so many different ways. So I wouldn't discount that being a possibility, right, for someone, but that's not where my mind goes to first. But
and very quickly, I only have a minute left. Why Mayor Lightfoot and Governor Pritzker are not opening the doors to Black migrants? However, they're doing it to other ethnic groups. Can the Black Caucus kind of like put pressure on the mayor and the governor to have Haitian to come to Chicago? Your thoughts very quickly.
I can speak on that. I think, we do live in a state, in a city that is the most welcoming in the United States. So we have seen both the city and the state pass legislation that makes the state and the city the most welcoming, right? Chicago is a sanctuary city. It has prohibited the cooperation between local law enforcement and ICE detention. ICE, for example, to prevent the detention of folks. At the state level, we have been able to pass legislation that has ended all ICE contracts at the state. Therefore, we are very much looking forward to the closure of the 2 remaining ICE detention centers across the state. So the state is doing a lot, but I think we have leadership within the state. The Black Caucus across the state has done a lot, but we have leaders, particularly Senator Durbin, that needs to do a lot more to protect Black immigrants across the country, including repealing Title 42. So I think we need to push him to really voice that and to push Congress and President Biden to end Title 42. And Roman, I know we had talked about this earlier, so I don't want to miss this opportunity to say.
Go right ahead.
Yes.
So please give intellectualradio.com/iHeartRadio station where they can contact you. What events is coming up very quickly because I only have 1 minute left.
Okay, so we are doing a national week of action in support of Black migrants with the national organization called Black Alliance for Just Immigration. And our biggest event will be this coming Saturday, the 16th. From 12 to 2 p.m. We'll be doing what we're calling a gathering by the DuSable Museum to kind of have a community conversation about the challenges that Black immigrants are facing across the country and how us as Illinois, as community members, can come together to support Black immigrants. You can reach us at United African Organization on Facebook, just United African Organization. We're on Twitter as Unite Africans. We're on Instagram as Unite Africans. We're located in Bronzeville on 49th and King Drive. We're easy to find. Google us, United African
I'm receiving a hard rap. Okay, so
yes.
I want to thank you both. We will have you on the show again and again. I do apologize. So thank you so much for joining us. That's going to do it for us on the Drive at 5 on intellectualradio.com. Thanks to Earl Winfrey, our executive producer, Wanda, who behind the scenes. You guys, what a show. Have a good one, everyone.